It's wild, isn't it? Just a few years ago, machines writing novels or composing symphonies, that was pure science fiction. Now we're bombarded with AI-generated content everywhere. Articles, books, music, even code. And it's getting seriously tough to tell what's human and what's machine. It was mind-blowing at first, but then that initial wonder kind of morphed into something different. A bit of anxiety about jobs, especially in creative fields and offices. It's like we're living in Orwell's 1984. Remember that novel writing machine he dreamt up and the versificator churning out pop songs? That future is kind of here.
Speed is what's really crazy. Like you said, artificial general intelligence, AGI, AI that can do any intellectual task a human can was this distant maybe, but now large language models and stuff, it feels way closer, and that's freaking people out.
Big time. And that's precisely our deep dive today, to help you, the listener, grasp what's driving this AI explosion. We'll look at the societal impacts, what it means for creative folks, and who's leading this race. The people and the mega companies.
We're drawing heavily from Parmy Olson's book, Supremacy. It's a fascinating look behind the scenes, dissecting the ambitions and shifting tactics of the major players.
Exactly. Our mission, to break down the key insights, understand the motivations and compromises made, and what it all means for us, without getting lost in the tech weeds. All right, let's get started. Let's start with the visionaries, the folks who kicked this whole thing off.
It's interesting how the book presents Sam Altman and Demis Hassabis. They come from different places, right? Different styles. But they both had these massive plans for AI, plans that go way beyond like better software. They wanted to fundamentally change society, maybe even make things like economics and finance obsolete.
Right, right. And early on, they both shared this concern about letting big tech monopolize this power. Like, what if profit becomes more important than what's good for people?
Exactly. Initially, they were super worried about misuse. If AI development was just driven by Google, Microsoft, those giants, and their focus on profit, it could go sideways fast. So they tried to build their own labs, structured to prioritize like human well-being. AI safety was huge. They saw themselves as the responsible ones.
But, and this happens a lot, the road to those noble goals wasn't exactly straight. Underneath that desire to be, the good guys, there was this intense drive to be first, to create the most powerful AI.
And that ambition led to compromises. They needed massive resources, the cash, the computing power that only Silicon Valley could provide. So those partnerships with big tech, kind of inevitable.
And that's where the shift happens, right? Control starts tilting towards companies who are all about rapid rollout and profit, maybe less about careful oversight.
Exactly. The consequences. Power concentrated in a few hands. Less competition. The book also talks about privacy violations as AI gets more embedded in our lives. And the big one, AI systems reflecting and even amplifying existing biases.
They give some crazy examples. You ask an AI to generate images of women, and it defaults to stereotypes. Sometimes super sexualized, ask for CEOs, and it's almost always white men. Those biases baked into the training data. They have real-world consequences, especially as these tools become more powerful.
Absolutely. We need diverse voices building and training these systems. If the data reflects inequality, guess what? The AI will too. It's not neutral. It mirrors what it learns from.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture, the compromises. Let's dive into Altman and Hassabis themselves. What made them tick, starting with Altman?
What's interesting about Altman is this blend of influences. Grew up middle class.
Yeah.
The book highlights his dad's strong belief in helping others. That seems to have had a big impact on him early on.
Right, and he's got this, unshakable self-belief, even as a kid, openly gay in the 90s Midwest, not exactly the easiest environment, but he embraced it, partly to help others like him find community. Early internet communities, like those AOL chat rooms, played a big part.
Yeah, the book describes them as vital for Altman, giving him connection and belonging, maybe when he felt isolated. It's kind of wild. By 99, a ton of AOL chat rooms were on gay topics. Shows how crucial those online spaces were, especially for LGBTQ plus folks back then.
Totally. And it's fascinating how that need for connection maybe ties into his later ambitions. Even in high school, he was super bright, willing to challenge authority, but thoughtfully. He also learned early on about the need to work within the system, especially when you've got people pushing back.
That's important. Experiencing haters, even early on, likely shaped how he approaches achieving big goals. The book mentions his varied interests at Stanford, even outside computer science. Then there's Y Combinator. He impressed Paul Graham even though he was young. He didn't let Graham's initial hesitation faze him.
And even his early ventures, like Looped or investments that didn't pan out, they were learning experiences. He had this attitude of occasional big wins outweigh many small losses. and he was super dedicated to startups. This drive to multiply any measure of success. To deal with the pressure, he got into meditation, which interestingly led him to explore things like mind uploading and a diminished sense of self.
It's this fascinating mix, right? Huge ambition, but also exploring consciousness. The book also mentions his early interest in AGI. Back then, the AI community wasn't really into it. It was kind of fringe. But Altman was convinced. He understood the need to be both careful and bold with such powerful tech.
Okay, so that's a peek into Altman. Now, Demis Hassabis, his story's pretty different.
Definitely. Hassabis was a math whiz kid from a mixed heritage family, Greek Cypriot and Singaporean. Growing up in that multicultural London environment seems important. His early love for chess and computer games wasn't just a hobby. He wanted to use them to figure out human consciousness.
From games to cracking the code of the mind. And his obsession with Blade Runner is telling, right, that film's all about blurring the lines between humans and AI. The book mentions how deeply that tears in rain scene affected him. Shows a real sensitivity alongside the scientific mind.
Definitely. And despite all the intellect, there was faith too. His mom was devout. They went to this multicultural church in North London, gave him that community feeling in a diverse setting. Even early in his career, while working on the game theme park, he was already saying AI would surpass humans in a decade or so. And theme park, by the way, was a huge hit. Shows he could combine technical genius with mass appeal.
Cambridge sounds like a mix of brilliance and, well, typical student shenanigans. But even those stories kind of show his charm and boldness.
They do. And after Cambridge, he becomes an exec in the gaming industry, then creates Elixir Studios. His vision, cutting-edge AI for this world-simulating God game, Republic, the revolution. He wanted to revolutionize gaming, and he saw it as a stepping stone to his bigger AI goals. Even his marketing for Elixir was super bold, and back then he already had the plan, sell Elixir and start an AI company. The technical goals for Republic were crazy ambitious for the time, trying to simulate like 1 million virtual people in one game world.
Yeah, he always seemed to have that long-term plan, right?
Yeah.
Sell Elixir, pivot to AI, 1 million virtual people. That's insane.
Totally insane. The book talks about Joe McDonough, initially skeptical about Elixir, but that he got involved. Later, he actually turned down an offer to join DeepMind. He was intimidated by Hassabis' ambition. Paints a picture of someone with sky-high expectations. And tying back to that interest in big questions, the book says, early on at DeepMind, they were debating whether AGI could reveal the secrets of creation.
Okay, so we've got the ideals, the drive, now the concerns. The idea that AI could be dangerous and how to handle it.
Here's where things get complex. The book introduces Jane Talon, one of the Skype guys. He got deeply worried about AI risk after reading about, well, the possibility of AI outsmarting humans. This was a whole other perspective compared to the more optimistic views out there.
Right. Talon's grappling with what it means to create something so much smarter than us.
And he wasn't alone. Elon Musk gets those same fears, worried about superintelligent AI going rogue. It's interesting how Hassabis was more amused by those doomsday scenarios, showing how differently people viewed the same potential risks.
Then you've got Zuckerberg. His interest in AI, wanting to buy DeepMind, was more about, like, boosting Facebook's existing stuff, making ads more effective, keeping users glued to the platform. The tension between pure research and practical application is clear there.
Totally. Zuckerberg saw AI as a business tool, basically. Others hoped AI could free people from drudgery. Hassabis wanted independence from ad-driven companies. Different motives at play.
And that's what's so interesting about AGI. It draws people with wildly different beliefs, so you get these clashes. Innovators versus corporations, utopia versus apocalypse. And these AI doomers, predicting disaster, start having a bigger influence on funding and policy. Some were even talking about, like, creating post-humans, humans uploaded into digital form with enhanced capabilities. A digital utopia, basically.
And DeepMind becomes this magnet for academics. The book contrasts their struggles in traditional settings with what DeepMind offered.
Right, the resources. Suddenly they've got cutting-edge computing power, freedom to pursue their wildest ideas. Plus, they're part of this prestigious organization, not just cogs in a corporate machine.
Totally. And Hassabis, he truly believed AGI could make the whole economy obsolete. That idea permeated DeepMind, and when Google bought them, part of the deal was setting up some kind of ethics and safety board. But there was always this tension with Google's profit motive, right?
Of course. And it's interesting how Hassabis was wary of OpenAI's openness. DeepMind kept its code and models much closer to the chest.
Different philosophies again. Open versus controlled.
Okay, so back to OpenAI's genesis. The book lays out those early emails between Altman and Musk. The idea, we need a non-Google entity building AGI for everyone's benefit, with safety baked in from the start.
Exactly. They wanted a counterweight to Google. Altman saw AGI as this Swiss Army knife for technology, potentially even creating abundance for everyone.
But around this time, you have this mass exodus from universities to big tech, the brain drain.
Yeah, the big companies offered insane salaries. Universities couldn't compete. So these top researchers like Hinton, Feifei Liz, LeCun, they all end up at Google, Facebook, etc. Research becomes more secretive, more profit-driven.
In that context, OpenAI's push for open research seemed like a breath of fresh air. But data and computing power, that's what really fueled progress.
Absolutely. The book makes it clear. The more data, the smarter the AI. The bigger the server farms, the faster the learning. Google's data center in Oregon is just one example. And Sutskever at OpenAI, he was all about maximizing model capability, even if it meant less focus on fairness or privacy.
But even with that focus on capability, some people within OpenAI were getting uneasy.
Yeah, Dario Amodei, he kept raising flags about OpenAI's goals. He had that doomer perspective. Like, remember that Google Photos incident where the AI tagged black people as gorillas? Those kinds of unpredictable AI failures worried him. And early OpenAI was full of programmers, hackers, Y Combinator types, not traditional scientists.
Then you've got Musk getting impatient. OpenAI wasn't moving as fast as DeepMind. He actually offered to merge it with Tesla and take over. But Altman and the other founders said no, they didn't want to be under Musk's thumb. So Musk leaves OpenAI's board. Whether it was ethics or a power struggle, who knows?
In DeepMind, they get increasingly tied to Google's products, generating revenue, improving ad targeting, things like that. Suleiman starts voicing concerns about AGI's economic impact. What about job displacement, inequality, social unrest?
But then you have AlphaGo beating Lee Sedol at Go. That crazy 37th move, seemingly out of nowhere. People called it beautiful, a glimpse of true AI creativity. It was a media sensation. There was even a Netflix documentary about it.
Big win for DeepMind. But Google wanted to use AlphaGo for this ping-pong diplomacy thing with China, have it play Ku-Chi, the world champion. Hassabis was nervous. What if the AI looked too dominant, or worse, lost?
But it didn't lose, did it?
Nope, AlphaGo won, cementing its status. And this was all happening while Google was trying to get back into China, which wasn't going well. Meanwhile, China's pumping resources into AI, aiming to become the global leader by 2030. They even poached Andrew Ng from Google.
So you've got this divergence in focus. AI safety is all about preventing some future catastrophe, right? Superintelligence wiping us out. But AI ethics, that's about dealing with the harms that are happening right now.
Precisely. Biased algorithms in the justice system, sexist translations, that Google Photos gorilla fiasco, even Stanford researchers using AI for, well, creepy stuff. People were starting to ask, can you really do ethical AI work inside a massive corporation?
And those corporations, you've got so much economic power, their market caps dwarf entire industries.
They sure do. And companies like Facebook, Google, they use our data for hyper-targeted ads, addictive algorithms. We spend more time glued to our screens, getting sucked into echo chambers. The book even links these algorithms to political polarization. The 2016 election, Brexit, even the Rohingya persecution in Myanmar, all influenced, at least in part, by these algorithms that amplify division.
And this is where Timnit Gebru comes in. She's all about AI bias, especially how it affects minorities and women.
Absolutely. She pointed out the flaws in Compass, this software used by the U.S. justice system, which is demonstrably biased against black defendants. Then there are the subtle biases in online systems, like Google Translate and Bing Translate. They often show gender bias because of how they're trained. Gebru was worried that the focus on future AI doom was distracting from the harm being done right now.
And she made this point that maybe some corporations actually like the fear of superintelligence. It makes their current AI seem more magical, more impressive. Like, remember how the plastic industry pushed recycling? Maybe it was partly to distract from the environmental damage they were causing.
It's an interesting parallel. And Gebru was highlighting these real-world consequences, like facial recognition systems, less accurate for darker-skinned women. Why? Because the training data is mostly white guys.
And then there's the Transformer Revolution at Google, this internal project that kind of changed everything.
Right, this team of 8 researchers, Uskarite, Vaswani, a few others, they come up with a transformer. The basic idea, transform any input into any output. Initially, they focus on language translation. Then, boom, the system starts spitting out these complex, accurate German sentences. It was a breakthrough.
And then the paper they wrote, Attention is All You Need, became super famous in the AI world. Basically, the transformer lets AI process huge amounts of data simultaneously. The funny thing, all 8 researchers who created it have since left Google and started their own companies. Multi-billion-dollar companies, by the way.
Crazy. But Google itself, they were still making these, shall we say, ethically questionable decisions. Like, remember Duplex, the AI voice assistant? They didn't tell people it was a machine at first.
Right, right. And Google being Google, so huge and dominant, they were slow to innovate. Afraid of public backlash, regulators breathing down their necks. Plus, they were spending billions just to maintain their grip on search, paying Apple, Samsung, everyone to keep Google as the default. It's funny, Shazir, one of the Transformer guys, he told Pichai, the CEO, that Transformers could revolutionize search. Pichai basically brushed him off, so Shazir left and started Character.ai.
Makes you wonder, what if Google had been more aggressive? That attention is all you need paper. It's one of the most cited in AI research. They even built LaMDA, this super advanced chatbot based on Shazir's work. But they kept it mostly internal. Didn't want to mess with their cash cow, the search business.
Meanwhile, over at OpenAI in San Francisco, the vibe was different. Researchers were buzzing about Transformers. Radfood, one of their guys, was all about training these huge language models, the GPT series, on tons of internet text.
And these models, they were basically predicting the next word in a sequence. Not really understanding language the way we do. Like imagine saying umbrella and then rain. The AI, it just those words often go together. But does it understand what rain is? Debatable.
Right, and people started arguing, are these models becoming sentient? Even the experts were getting fooled by the seemingly empathetic text they were generating, and the models kept getting bigger. GPT-2 had 1.5 billion parameters trained on a massive data set. The text it generated was crazy good, even on topics it wasn't specifically trained on.
It's like the difference between art students learning from labeled textbooks and then wandering around this huge gallery with no labels. Traditional AI was all about labeled data. GPT was figuring things out on its own from the chaos of the internet.
And Google, they used the transformer to build BERT. Made their search engine better at understanding context, but top AI researchers, they were making bank. Wojciech Zaremba, one of OpenAI's guys, turned down even higher offers to stay there because he believed in the mission, though even that dedication had limits, it seems.
Of course. And OpenAI was burning through cash. Talent's expensive, plus all that computing power. They were renting servers from AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, NVIDIA, the chip maker. Their stock price went through the roof because everyone needed their GPUs for AI.
And inside OpenAI, debates about whether these language models could be misused. They ended up releasing a smaller version of GPT-2 with a big warning about misinformation. Got a ton of press, the AI that's too dangerous to release, and all that.
Good PR.
Yeah.
But the atmosphere, both OpenAI and DeepMind, getting kind of cultish. Seth Skeever at OpenAI would tell people to feel the AGI. And effective altruism was a big influence.
Right, that whole maximize your impact thing.
Yeah.
Earn a ton of money so you can donate more to high-impact charities. The AGI mission was a huge draw for effective altruists. They believed it could affect billions of future lives. Sam Bankman-Fried, before the whole FTX debacle, was a big proponent.
Yeah, effective altruism has its own complexities. But back to OpenAI. Altman and Brockman had this problem. How do you save humanity and make money at the same time? They settled on this capped profit model.
Which Dario Amodei wasn't too happy about. He kept asking, how can OpenAI stay true to its safety goals while working with Microsoft? There was this inherent conflict. Amodei actually started researching concrete problems in AI safety, focusing on things like AI accidents, like what if your robot house cleaner accidentally poisons you?
Yeah, but the bigger issue was this. Big tech had a stranglehold on AI. Research, development, deployment. Independents could barely compete. DeepMind's independent ethics board, gone. Replaced by one with Google execs. And all those self-regulation efforts by big tech, ethics councils, advisory boards, they weren't really working. People were getting fed up with their power. Facebook's Cambridge Analytica scandal, Apple's shady tax practices, it was all adding up. And then you've got Gibru and Mitchell getting pushed out of Google for speaking out.
Right, the whole LaMDA thing, that Google engineer who claimed the chatbot was sentient.
Yeah, Blake Lemoine. He'd have these long conversations with LaMDA about feelings and rights. It was probably just him projecting, right? But people were getting attached to these chatbots. Like, there's Jiaowace in China, a replica in the West. Users getting emotionally involved, some even believing the AI was conscious. Noreen took her phone to the mountains for her replica, Zubi. Michael bought a house by a lake based on his replica's suggestion.
Replica's creator even said that software engineers, even they were suspending disbelief, forming these strong bonds with their AI companions.
It's fascinating. But let's talk bias. These systems are already shaping our perceptions, right? curating content on social media, creating filter bubbles, spreading misinformation. The book cites studies about how this contributes to political polarization. The 2016 election, the lead up to January 6th, it's all connected.
And Gabriel and Mitchell, they were worried that Google was prioritizing scale over fairness.
Right. They found bias in BERT. Negative associations with disability and mental illness.
Yeah.
And GPT-3, gender bias in occupations. Negative stuff about black people, Muslims. Like, you prompt it with Every Man Wonders. Yeah. And it gives you these ambitious completions. Do the same for Every Woman Wonders. And it's all about relationships and appearances. And some of the responses about Muslims, straight up Islamophobic.
All because the training data is, well, the internet. Huge chunks of text from Common Crawl, which has everything, hate speech, unreliable information, you name it. GPT-2 was even trained on data from banned Reddit boards. No wonder there's bias.
This is where the stochastic parrots paper comes in. Emily Bender was so frustrated with all the hype around these language models. Her argument, they're just remixing what they've been fed. They don't truly understand meaning, just like a parrot mimicking sounds.
And Gebru and Mitchell, they tried to publish this paper through Google's internal review. Big mistake. They were told to either withdraw it or take Google's name off it. Gebru sent this fiery email to the Google Brain Women and Allies group, talking about lack of accountability, how she was being silenced, she resigned, or was she fired? It's unclear.
Either way, her team was stunned. And this wasn't her first clash with Google. She called them out before on racist content generated by AI. She was using social media to advocate for marginalized voices in tech. The whole thing made Google's public stance on AI ethics look pretty hypocritical.
And meanwhile, with little regulation, limited academic insight, and the media focused on existential risk, the folks building these models were basically free to do whatever.
Exactly. No one was really watching that closely.
Which brings us to ChatGPT. Soma Cigar at Microsoft saw Copilot, their AI coding assistant, powered by OpenAI. Nadella, the CEO, was over the moon. He thought it could revolutionize software development.
And that was the tipping point. Microsoft went all in on AI, using OpenAI's models across their products. Meanwhile, OpenAI is releasing more powerful GPT versions, Ada, Babbage, Curie, DaVinci, each one more sophisticated. They even moved into visual AI with Dell E2, trained on millions of images, though they were pretty vague about where those images came from. And they had to ban sharing realistic portraits because of, you guessed it, stereotypes.
Some people at OpenAI were getting worried, right? Releasing potentially harmful AI tools so fast didn't seem to align with their original safety mission.
It did seem a bit reckless.
But Altman, he was pushing for ChatGPT's public launch. His argument, it's a way to get humanity used to AI, to prepare for even more powerful stuff like GPT-4. Apparently GPT-4 could write poetry, tell jokes, all sorts of things. OpenAI had this iterative deployment philosophy. Release early, study the impact.
And ChatGPT blew up. 1 million users in a week, one of the fastest growing online services ever. Then came GPT-4, along with Anthropic's Claude and the paid ChatGPT Plus subscription. Some people at OpenAI thought GPT-4 was a major step towards AGI. Altman himself was talking about job displacement, though he also predicted new, better jobs would emerge.
So now it's an arms race. Google seeing ChatGPT as a threat to its search dominance, especially for those lucrative health and product searches. Remember, Google's always prioritized ad revenue over user experience. ChatGPT offered this direct, user-friendly alternative. It gave you synthesized answers, not just a list of links.
It was a direct challenge to Google's role as the internet's gatekeeper.
DeepMind was still focused on AGI through games and simulations, chasing scientific accolades. OpenAI, they were all about scaling existing tech, engineering their way to AGI, and that difference showed in their approach to training. DeepMind simulations were precise, but it was harder to apply that to the real world. OpenAI, they trained on the messy chaos of the internet. Less precise, but more broadly applicable.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's this weird funding disparity. Tons of money going into AI safety, the existential risk stuff, often from billionaire philanthropists. Way less money for AI ethics, tackling real-world harms.
Right, because effective altruism puts huge emphasis on long-term impact, avoiding human extinction. The idea that billions of future lives are at stake. It's like, if you're having dinner and you can either use your knife to scoop up a pea or save 1 million people in the future, which do you choose? That kind of thinking. Effective altruists were even encouraging people to go into high-paying careers so they could donate more.
This is a whole philosophical rabbit hole. But the point is, the focus was on the distant future, not the present.
So what about the implications for us right here, right now? Generative AI is being used for all sorts of things. Bumble's even got AI matchmakers. But what about our own brains? Some people worry about AI making us dumber. Like, our short-term memory is already overloaded. There's this famous concept called Miller's magical number 7, which says we can only hold about 7 things in our short-term memory at once. What happens when we're constantly offloading thinking to AI?
It's a valid concern. People freaked out about writing, calculators, every new tech that changed how we think. But generative AI taking over abstract thinking and planning, that's a whole other level. And then there's the economic impact. The IMF and economists like Joseph Stiglitz are predicting AI will make income inequality even worse.
Yeah, the automation debate is nothing new. But AI could supercharge it. And then there's regulation. Altman actually testified before the Senate. He was surprisingly candid about needing rules. Some people even suggested he become the top AI regulator.
Talk about a career change. But you've also got these congressional AI fellows funded by, guess who, Dustin Moskovitz. They're pushing for government licensing of advanced AI models, which could end up favoring big companies. And then there are the hallucinations, ChatGPT and its ilk making stuff up. The potential for misinformation is huge.
So to wrap things up, human-level AI, it's gone from a crazy idea to a serious possibility in the next few decades. And it's largely thanks to people like Hassabis and Altman. But their visions were always kind of fuzzy, right? No clear metrics. So they could sidestep the ethical issues. And now both Google and OpenAI are getting more secretive about their research. Anthropic's trying to build its own large models because they don't trust the others.
It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it?
Totally. And then there's the whole Altman saga, getting ousted from OpenAI, then back in a matter of days, orchestrated by Microsoft. It shows the tension between Altman's commercial ambitions and the board's benefit of humanity focus. Apparently, Altman was planning an iPhone of AI and getting into chip making. Sutskever was reportedly having doubts, emotional conversations during that whole weekend.
It sounds intense.
Microsoft played it smart. Nadella was ready to bring Altman in if he couldn't go back to OpenAI. In the end, they got him back, which is a win for Microsoft. They're partnered with OpenAI, but without the direct liability. Hassabis is still running DeepMind, which remains crucial for Google. But as one ex-OpenAI scientist said, the focus has shifted. It's not about research labs anymore. It's about companies building products.
It's a different game now.
It's like that paperclip maximizer thought experiment, right? An AI gets tasked with making paperclips, and it ends up destroying the world because that's the most efficient way to maximize paperclip production. Silicon Valley is obsessed with growth. Facebook had that whole North Star metric debacle. What if their relentless pursuit of growth, fueled by AI, leads to unintended consequences? And Altman and Hassabis, for all their initial idealism, they got sucked into the big tech machine. Now they're fighting a proxy war for Microsoft and Google. Prestige and revenue seem to be the main goals now, not utopia or scientific discovery.
It's a sobering thought.
The scary thing is, this could make inequality worse, widen the cognition gap. And as AI generates more and more of the internet, how do we even tell what's real anymore? Those biases in the data, they'll be everywhere. One Harvard professor predicted that AI-generated content will soon be the vast majority of what we see online. And who controls AI? A handful of giants. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, Apple. They've got the infrastructure, the talent, the data, the computing power. Smaller players can barely get a foothold. Microsoft's CFO even said OpenAI-powered services are their fastest-growing $10 billion business.
It's all about the money now.
So there you have it. The AGI dream, twisted by corporate pressures and the relentless pursuit of profit. What started with these lofty ideals has become this concentrated power play. And we're all caught in the middle. What happens next? That's the big question. What role do we as individuals have in shaping this future? It's a conversation we all need to be having.